going to try to make this a little shorter for you, okay? And so I want to explain some things as we get started. With that said, the only thing I have on my screen right now, I have your instructions, I have the file over here on the side, and I have gone ahead and, put my name on it, okay? The first thing that I want to explain is what happens when you see dates here. Well, the first thing is that you need to understand that what is a date except for a number? But the tricky part about dates is that it's difficult to subtract and add them if we looked at them in this particular format, because the computer has to understand, well, this is a leap year, and so there's an extra day in February. Some months have 30 days, some months have 31 days, and it would just be a lot to try to keep up with. So what the makers of even Lotus, an old spreadsheet software, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and what they did is they picked a day, and they said, we're going to call this day 1, okay? And if it was at early in the morning, it would be 0 days, because the 1 day hadn't been completed, and it would be like 0.1, right? And if it was tomorrow afternoon, we would call that day and that time 1.5. And so we're just literally going to number every single day. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and we could have half days and quarter days to really target or to put serial numbers on every single date, okay? Now, in the olden days, the software was just not smart enough to understand the difference between numbers and days. Truthfully, it wasn't even smart enough to understand that this was a text field. So you had to code everything, and when I say code, you just had to put a symbol in there. So in the olden days, and Excel remembers the olden days, if I wanted Excel to understand that the word credit card was just a piece of text I typed in, and don't try to use it as a label, and don't try to use it as a named range, and don't try to calculate credit times card and all this, I'd have to put a little apostrophe in front of it. See how it still remembers that? That's left over from the olden days, okay? Now, why do I say that? Because this is so smart. Excel is so smart nowadays that I could actually get the correct answer to number of days rented. If I took the first date and I subtracted the second date, it said 3 days. In fact, when I checked this, I said, surely they sabotaged you somehow to make that not work, but they didn't. Okay, it would work. Why does it work? Because when I selected, the cells, and you can pick whichever cell you want here, and I go in to look at the formatting of the cell, okay, it's formatted as a date cell. So Excel's like, well, duh, it's a date. I know the serial number for that date, and I'll just go ahead and make that conversion, because that's what they want. They want to convert this to a serial number and that to a serial number, and then subtract one serial number from the other, right? But your instructions actually say over here in cell C6, so let me undo. That was Control Z, undo. Okay. In cell E6, enter the appropriate date formula. And you guys found it because you told me that in class, and I'm turning in my book here, because, what page was that on? 508. 508. They start to explain the date function and the serial number, they explain the serial numbers and all that kind of stuff. And I see that on page 509, they have this great example of the DateDiff formula. And I know one person, I won't use your names on the video, but I know one person used that formula and successfully, and that is cool. That's exactly what you should be doing. Okay, so I was going to do that in the example, but I kind of noticed something when I did. I said, well, I was going to demonstrate to you how to use the insert function and just search for like date diff or subtract 2 dates. And in fact, I even wanted to show you these categories and click on date and time. And I was going to pick date diff out of the lineup here. And I don't see date diff. I even went up here and searched for it. And I said subtract dates. And man, it didn't find it. And I said, what is going on here? So I went back to all functions, and then I even said, well, let me put the word date first and date subtract. You know, I mean, I was really trying to, you know, get it to give me that DateDiff field. And this is what I think is going on. Excel has made a lot of changes, and I think your textbook is just a little behind the times on this between the previous version of Excel and this version. And I believe that that DateDiff function may be one that is being phased out. Now, as they phase out functions, they still work. They try to support them for as long as they can. They try to provide a lot of backwards compatibility, but at the same time, they try to push you into the newer functions. So I tell you, here's my real-world situation. I put in here, you know, subtract 2 dates. I mean, I'm saying, tell me. And I went through, and with each function, I read, what does it do? And that's interesting with custom parameters and all. And I got to this one. And I said, well, how about that? And I looked over at your book because I was going to be so excited because I thought I saw days, but I didn't see days. I saw day. And day does something different. It returns that serial number rather than the date. Sometimes that's helpful, but this is perfect. Returns the number of days between the 2 dates. Perfect. So I'm going to try that function. Why not? So what is my end date? My end date's going to be this guy here. That's when I return it. What is my start date? Going to be this guy right here. And I can already see it's calculating the correct number. Perfect. Of course, I know when I copy the formula that it is updating D7, D8, D9. Remember what I told you. Now, see how it thinks I'm starting to edit? Get out of there. You can hit the escape key on your keyboard or hit that X, but don't start messing with your formulas, okay? Because you'll mess them up. Now, I'm doing something I've talked about in class. As I'm clicking, I'm doing this, I'm not looking where I'm clicking, I'm looking up here because I want to make sure that my row numbers are changing as I go through this. And sure enough, they are. So I'm good there, right? Now, what do my instructions say next? I got to go through some steps. Rental, okay, daily rates. Now, daily rates, before I do that, I got to do some named ranges. So let me go down here first. Cell B42, they want us to call this discount. Now, I would never ever want to actually use the number 20% up here in my formulas, because if I did, what's going to happen when my manager says change that to 30? I'm going to have to go update all my formulas, so never do that. Put the value like they did, put it on the page, okay? Now I'm just going to come up here, and in one easy way, hello, my computer, one easy way to do a named range, hello. You know, I did this 2 seconds ago when I was doing the example, and I wonder if I blew its mind. You can just type, there we go. You can just type discount in that box. Now, you could also go to formulas and define it, and we did that as an in-class. So I'm showing you a different way. Gas cost, cell B44, there it is right there. All of a sudden, this is giving me crap. Okay, gas cost, there we go. If you have any doubt, you know, just click away someplace, look in the drop-down box, discount, boom. Gas cost, boom, okay? Now, here's the next thing, and I want us to think through this. And believe me, the last video was so much longer, you would have been so confused. So let's think through this. What I'm going to do for the daily rate, I'm not even looking at these instructions right now. I'm just, let's have some common sense here for a minute, okay? Obviously, I am going to look up for the green collection, and I'm going to say, oh, okay, ma'am, that is $49.99, right? And I'm going to put that up here. But I want the computer to do that automatically, because if I go through typing $49.99, $49.99, or whatever it is, you know, 76, whatever, if I go through doing all that, what is going to happen? How much work am I going to have when my boss comes and says, guess what, we're going up to $59.99 and 78, 43, you know, and I'm going to have to change all those numbers. So I don't want to do that. I want the computer to look those values up for me. Okay, that's what I want it to do. So, oh, I missed a step. Let's go back. We missed a very important step. So those are my rental rates. So I am going to name my range here, and look at me selecting this. I say I've missed it. I'm looking for the step where it tells me, yeah, A37, that was right, A37 through, A37 through B40. And I'm going to name this rental rates. No spaces, can't have any spaces, cannot start with a number, right? So rental rates, that's my rental rate table. And what I'm going to tell Excel to do is to look inside this table and find the value, green collection, and return to me whatever's in the next column. Or look up and find in this table, oh, compact midsize, and return it that rate. So it's going to look at this little table that I've created, and it's going to return the appropriate value. Okay, so it says here to enter a formula that determines the cost. Am I down? No, I'm still up here. I'm sorry. Jumping around because I'm not reading anymore because I wanted to explain what I was doing. They tell me to use the appropriate lookup, okay, formula. That's what I'm supposed to use. Okay. Insert, I am supposed to look something up. Lookup. Now, I see lookup here, and I would in the real world spend some time reading through these to see which one is the best, but it says looks up a value either from a one row or one column range, but it says it's provided for backwards compatibility. In other words, they're trying to get rid of this. It was used a long time, you know, in the olden days, and in the future they're not going to have it. Backwards compatibility. Probably not for me. Now, you would read, I kind of know what these things do, so I'm going to go through these fast so I don't lose you. But VLOOKUP, you know, I told you in class, check that out because that's a really cool thing. It says it looks for a value in the leftmost column and then returns a value in the same row from a column that you specify, like column 2, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. Okay, so that's what it does. That sounds perfect. Now, you could look through here, find some more stuff. Here's HLOOKUP. Well, what do you think that one's going to do? Looks like something, you know, kind of similar. Looks for a value in the top row of a table or array and returns the value in the same column. Well, okay, we don't need it from the same column. So VLOOKUP is what you're going to use here. Okay, so what value do I need it to look up? Well, I need it to look up A6, right? Green collection, and come down here and find green collection. Where do I look it up? That's my table or array. If I'm losing you, then take time as you click in these blanks to read the description. You'll be as fast as I am after a while. You know how I learned? I read these things. And sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you get it wrong, and you learn. So be patient with yourself. Okay? Now, what did we call our little table? Because what I could do right now is I could say to Excel, here's my table. There's only one problem with that. Oh, look at that. It recognized that it was rental rates. If I put in the cells A37 through B40, then when I started to copy the formula, it would say, oh, okay, you just moved the formula down one, so I need to move my, you know, these values down one, and it would keep messing up the formula, and I would have to keep going and fix it. But this is an absolute reference whenever you name a range, and so it's going to stay locked on that table, those values. So I like that. Now here's where it says column index number. Well, the column index number is the column, and index means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the column number that it's supposed to return. Well, I don't want the first column, I want the second column. And as soon as I type that in there, you see what it's starting to return? Now, this is a little bizarre, you may say, because it's returning 84.99. Why on earth would it do that, right? Because that's one down here, because I'm not finished yet. Because I have another optional. This is not bolded because it's optional. But when things are optional, it sometimes takes on importance when it's not filled in. It says whatever value I put here is a logical value. Okay, to find, what this means is to find the closest match, not an exact match to green collection, not an exact match to compact midsize, not an exact match to full size, to find the closest match. You know, this is normally very helpful in numbers. If I say that my grading scale is 90 to 100, I'm not giving it an exact match. I'm telling it if it's the nearest value in there, okay? Okay, anyway, that may not make sense, but it says if it's a closest. If I'm not doing an exact match, then I would put true in here, or I would leave it blank. So it's currently blank, and so for some reason, I don't know, wherever the index worked out to, it didn't see the green collection, it skipped over it, and it returned the wrong value. So that is no good. We need to put, to find an exact match, false. So I'm going to put false in there, and look, it immediately straightened out our formula. So if I would have panicked earlier, it was just because I wasn't finished yet. Okay, so I had to finish the formula. Now we're going to spot check this. I'm going to copy it. So far so good. Notice because this rental rates is an absolute value, it stayed locked on this, but my other cells advanced. And when I say advanced, rather than A6, it says A7, right? Now that's obviously what I expect to happen as I continue to copy this down. But what the Excel gurus do is after they copy it, they're going to click. And you say, why are you clicking? What are you doing? Because I'm not looking at 84.99. I'm looking here. And I want to make sure that number is changing, and that rental rates is still there, and that column 2 is still there, and that false is still there, and it is. So far, so good, right? Okay, let's save because we've done some good work. Now I need to calculate my total before any options are applied. So let's come down here, and this is where it kind of gets a tricky wicket, but we're going to think this through, okay? Now, so far, if you were not giving a discount, this would be easy peasy, because all you would do is say equals the number of days times the rate. And you would be good to go, wouldn't you? I mean, life would just be so great and you would be done. Unfortunately, that's not what you want to do. You want to do a discount, okay? I'm going to delete that. So let's think about this discount from the instructions. It has two conditions. It looks for express miles and it looks for rewards, right? Okay? So I'm going to have to think about that. I'm going to have to think about how to handle that. But before I even get into that, I want to understand the math. It says, first of all, I need to make sure I use the named range for my cells. So when they say named range, they're talking about my, my discount here. Okay. So how do you apply a discount? Okay. Well, first of all, let's just say, we're just going to play around here for a minute. Let's just say that our total bill was $100. And we're going to apply a discount, so of 20%. So I would say, equals, I'm going to start my formula, $100 times the discount, right? And so I know I need to take $20 off. Then I would have to go through the next step, and I would have to say equals the original price minus the discount, which is $20. And you get that, right? Isn't it the same thing if I said, well, the discount is 20%, right? So I just took 80%. I just took 1 minus 20. 100% minus 20% is 80%. And if I had just multiplied the original value by 1 minus the discount, right? So if I would have said equals 100 times, and I'm going to say 80%, and Excel is so smart it even understands that percent sign, I would have gotten the value in one step. Okay? The only problem is I don't ever want to put 80% in here, because what if my manager changes and says now it's a 30%, or now it's a 10%, or a 5, or a 15? I want this to automatically change. So how did I come up with 80%? Well, the way I came up with it is I said 100% minus the 20%, and that's how I came up with it, right? Okay, I'm walking you through the steps, but I don't want to, hard code that 20%. I don't want to actually have to change my formula if this changes, so I'm going to use the cell name in there instead. Now I'll give you one more little shortcut. Instead of saying 100%, 100%, if we move the decimal over and convert that back to a number, is the same as the number 1. Okay? So here, when I told you in class, the important thing here is to break these things down step by step by step. That's the first thing that we need to break down. That if we have a formula, we're going to take that total that we've calculated, and you know, we have to calculate our total by saying what? Daily rate times number of days. Okay? So I would have to say here, let me just go one step further. Daily rate to cell E6, G6 is the rate. So what if instead I said E6 times G6, isn't that the daily rate, times 1 minus the discount? Okay, now that may seem complicated to you, but that's why I wanted you to think through it. Okay, now sometimes I write this kind of stuff down on a piece of paper, or to make it easy on myself, I actually will temporarily copy it to something like Notepad. So I'm going to use this as my piece of paper so that you can see it. Okay, so here's my piece of paper. That's what I remember this formula, oops, I'm editing my formula, it thinks, you know, needs to be if they had a discount. Now, I'm going to tell you what I truly, my approach to if statements when I started out. This is the only thing I understood, and you know this. We're gonna have to test, it says, because you only get the discount if you have rewards or if you used express miles. Okay? So, I only know how to test for one thing at a time. And when I say test, I'm talking about an if statement. What I know is that I have to ask a mathematical question. And my mathematical question may be something like, cell, what is that, F6? Does cell F6 equal, I'm going to say express miles. Now, here's the problem. Excel will look at this express miles, and it will look at something like discount, and it says, well, you know, now listen now, discount was a named range. Discount had a purpose, had a meaning. Just like G6, I know what to do with that because that's a cell name. I know what to do with a parenthesis and a minus sign. But you don't want it to do anything. You don't want it to multiply express times miles or say 1 minus express miles. This is just a value. And when we talk about text values, think of how you quote somebody. You say, he said, quote, express miles, end quote. That's what he said. That's what she said, express miles, okay? Now, I understand that there's another thing I have to look into, which is maybe it said rewards. I just can't think about all that at one time. So I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. And this is the test for my if statement. So I can write if over here just kind of as a placeholder, or I can say, what is my test? And this is the test. Now, the next thing I need to know is, if that test is true, what am I supposed to do? Ha! Luckily, I figured that out earlier. Now, I don't want to put my equal sign because you only get one equal sign, and you're not going to have equals all spread throughout your formula. So I know if this happens to be true, that I'm going to take E6, the number of days, multiply it by my daily rate, and then I'm going to subtract the discount. Aren't you glad we already figured out how to do all that? Otherwise, we'd be scratching our heads right now, but we have to break it down. Now I'm going to go to the false part. What do I do if it's false? Well, I don't give them the discount, right? So they're going to have to pay the E6, the days, times the daily rate. Oops, E6. So that's what I know is true, is my test, and what to do if it's true and what to do if it's false. Now, we know we can't put it into Excel like this, so let's write an if statement the good old-fashioned way. We could even get, I tell you what, we could even get Excel to help us. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to click on this. Here's if. You could search for if, but there's if. If says, what is the logical test? Didn't we already decide that? There's my test. And it's false. And that's right, it is false. What do I do if that's true? Do you see how I'm breaking this down? Folks, I am not babying you. I am telling you how I learned Excel. Now, I have been doing Excel literally since before it was born. I've been doing Excel since Excel was called Lotus and was from a different company. And so it's just, it was not the same thing, but I've been doing spreadsheets for a very long time. So am I faster at it? Can I do it in my head? Sure I can. But if I do, I'm very subject to make mistakes, and you can avoid those mistakes, and I can avoid those mistakes even when you are a pro at it, by breaking the formula down. So I hope that you do that. Okay, and that's why I'm walking you through this process. Okay. So we agree they should not get a discount. And when we multiplied these two values earlier, we got this 149.97, so we know that everything is okay there. There's only one problem. If we were going to continue to use this formula, it does not take into account that they also get the discount if they have rewards. And we don't want to type different formulas when we see it because, this has to be automated. We can't constantly be adjusting these things. But here's what I've learned. I have learned that this is what the if statement looks like, isn't it? If I were just to type it in without using Excel to help, now it thinks I'm modifying my formula right now. Get out of there, get out of there. Okay. So all I want to do is I want that exact same formula, except instead of express miles, it would say rewards, wouldn't it? Now let's think this through. I'm just cleaning it up, tidying up a little bit. Remember that there's a test, a true, and a false. If I was to think, in fact, I'm going to make my paper a little bigger. If I was to think about this test a little bit more, then I would say, here's what I'm going to test for. And if this is true, then I am going to do this, aren't I? I give them the discount, no questions asked, no problems. The only problem is if it's false. Because if it's false, it could be rewards. So what if, when it was false, what if I tested again? What if I did my test again? And this time I tested for rewards. Now, if you want to see this a little bit more clearly in kind of this layman's terms, that's what it would look like. If this test is true, give them the discount. If this test is false, test again to see if it says rewards. If it says rewards, give them the discount. If it does not say rewards, then we know it doesn't say express miles because we would have never been here to begin with if it did say express miles. We would have handled it already. So they're going to pay full price. Okay, so if this part makes sense, then now you go back and you look at this statement here. If F6 equals express miles, the true part of this statement says to give them the discount. But if it's not, then here's what we know. Now, you only get one equal sign. Get rid of that equal sign. Then here's what we know, that we need to test again. Did you see what I just did there? There's only one difference. Make sure I have enough parentheses, because here's the beginning parenthesis for that if statement, and here's the ending parenthesis. If you ever have any doubts, start from the inside and work out. Start from the inside and work out. Okay, you see I skipped one there and it causes some confusion. You can use a highlighter, you can mark a line through it. Okay, so now that I know that, now you say same result, and it should be. And if you want to manually calculate some of these, what should the discount be? Well, I could check this by saying, I'm probably going to get all kinds of errors when I submit this because I've done all this extra stuff. Daily rate times days rented, right? But what I know is that I can multiply this by, and just as a short quick test, 80% to check. Yeah. I mean, if you want to pull out your calculator and make sure that that's right, you could do that. I just am doing it on the screen so that I can show you. So it works when it says rewards. It works, you know, you can, again, check it again. Let's see if it works when we have express, and we know we need to multiply that by 80%. Okay, we got the right number there. And we probably ought to check and make sure that when it just says something like COD, that they're paying full price. So here's days rented times daily rate, no discount because they don't fit that criteria. Sure enough. Okay, so we're there. Let's save that. Woo, doggies, wasn't that something? Okay, now, again, do you write all this in your head the very first day? Oh, I would have never figured it out. Yes, you can, and you will, and you would. What it does require is that you have to think about it for a minute. It is a problem-solving exercise. Nobody in the workforce comes to you and says, I've got this project already completed, I just need you to type it in. That's a different job. That's a clerical data entry job, okay? If you're going to go into a business career, learning how to walk through these things is a requirement. I'll just be honest with you, it's a requirement. Now, I understand that you have to learn how to do it. That's why I'm creating the video. It's why I'm walking you through it. You know, sometimes it's difficult to do too much in the fly in classroom because I need a data file that I can work with. And if I'm not able to kind of set it up prior to that, then it just becomes more confusing to you because I have to explain more. Anyway, long story short, I hope this helps. That's the goal. So let's see, are we done yet? I think we have a little bit more to go. So that was that part. Copy the formula. We did that. Let's continue on. In cell, now I haven't done this next part yet, so we'll work through this together. In cell J6, what are we doing in J6? Enter a formula to determine the total cost with gas if the customer chose that option as indicated in column I. Use the named range for B44 in this. So in column I, oh, okay, so what are we doing here? We've got another if situation here, don't we? Well, that's a handy-dandy formula. So let's see, I guess we're checking to see if this cell here equals, now this is a text value, so quote, he said no. If he said no, if that's true, then he didn't want that option, then I guess the total would just be the same thing, wouldn't it? And this is where I should have scrolled down here because, oh, what do we call that again? We called it gas cost. But if that's not true, then we would have to say H6 plus gas cost. Does that sound about right? This is a absolute reference, so that's a good thing. And if we have some yeses, it should go up from, ooh, that's a big gas cost. Okay, it should go up. If we got no, it should not go up. Looking good. Let's go a little further. Okay, was that all of this one? Sometimes it's easy to not finish the instructions, so let's see. Total gas, use the named range. Okay, we did that. Copy the formula in J6, we did that, to J32, did that. In cell B46, what are we doing? B46, median rental length. Use the appropriate function to calculate the median length of rentals in days. Oh, isn't that something? Okay, median number. You're a company, let's think about this. You're a company and you say, I wonder how often people rent my cars. You know, on average, how many days? But the problem with an average is, what happens if some person up here rented their car for 50 days? Oh my God. First of all, I'd be in the money, but it probably doesn't happen that much. But it would skew my average. So undo that. Because what we know about averages is that if you have a high or a low, then it tends to distort the number, the average, right? So I don't want that. I don't want to use the average. Instead, where am I supposed to put this again? In cell B46. Instead, what I'm going to do is I need to find the median. Well, goodness, couldn't have been more easy than that. Now, whenever this box tells you to start entering all your cell values individually, you can also put a cell, a range in there. So here's my days rented. Boom. Okay, so on average, I guess you would say, but the truth of the matter is the median, oh, and I need to get rid of this stuff. The median is about 3 days. That's what most people, you know, that's what they're doing. Okay, save that because I think I did some good work there. Let's see, that was B46. So now B47, use the appropriate function to count the number of rentals. Well, my goodness, how could we ever count? It looks like we're going to have to count. Now, interesting thing to know, there's count and there's counting of alphas, alphanumeric, in other words, text. So if you are trying to count something like, let me just show you this. I'm going to use count because that's what we need to do. And remember, it tells us the answer right away. So what are we supposed to count the number? So use the appropriate function to count the number of rentals in the data. So I'm not summing these, I'm counting how many values are here, right? And see how it's already telling me the answer, 27? So we know there's 27 items there, right? What if I counted that? It tells me 0, because the purpose of the count function is to count numerics, and that's part of what it tells you when you're looking at, I'm going to do count again. When you're looking at count, counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. If you want to count, you know, letters, then you have to use count A, count alphanumerics. Counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. See the difference? Okay, I hope you do. It's a very important distinction. Okay, so I've got that, I'm going to do that. Count. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so am I finished? Save it and submit it. So let's see how I did. You know, I probably have screwed this thing up so much, clicking all over the place and demonstrating, but I do hope it helps. So I'm going to pause while I go to my screen, which is probably time. Okay, so I'm going to upload. Okay, and I'm going to hit submit. And I'm going to hit return to course. I've got all these. Okay, I'm uploading a lot of videos for you guys, so that you'll have all this. Okay. So let's see, how did my grade come back? Let's see on this one, if like the, oh, did I time out? Yeah, my session is timed out. Hold, please. Okay, I think I'm back on now. Okay, so there's grader 3. Let's upload. I don't know if it took that first upload. Okay, finish. Return to my course. It's probably going to take it a second, I guess. Okay, got a 76, so let's see. Let me view my submissions. What did I miss? Oh, I did. I uploaded it twice. Okay, so let's just pick. Doesn't matter because it's the same thing. There's my submitted file. I can always go back and work on that. What did I lose points on? Copying the file or the formula. Okay, I see I owe you some points on there, but that's 2 points. And you know, I've given you a 20-point window, so I'm not giving points for that. Okay, but what did I miss here? Wait a minute. Enter the appropriate data formula to determine the length of rental in days. Okay, so maybe they wanted you to use the DateDiff formula. Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so if they wanted you to use that, you know, one student said they got that to work. So you could have looked that up and used that. I do understand that you would have had to really follow the guidelines in your book. Okay, what was this one? Determine the total cost based on the number of days the vehicle was rented and the discount if the payment was. So they didn't like that, huh? Well, goodness, after all that explanation. Yeah, 2 points here, copy. Why is it not giving me the copy? At least it gave me the names. Okay, so if I am understanding, now let me just check something. Did I copy it to the right? 7 to 32. Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure I copied it down enough. Interesting. Okay. One more pause. Yes, please, a whiskey, please. Thank you.